Hey, it's Menz here. I'm going to be doing a quick little breakdown of the HWk 30, which is a new Tier 8 premium German light tank. Now, I'm just going to be going over the general characteristics. Do I think that you should buy it too? And, more or less how this thing plays. Not going to be doing any gameplay since, honestly, it's more of the same. It's a Tier 8 premium light, which currently... in recent memory, pretty much all premium tier 8 lights that have come out, they're just flat out better than the tech tree ones, which it's a little bit annoying because tier 8 light tanks in the tech tree are a little weak for their tier. People can make the argument too that moving all the way up, like even tier 9, tier 10, they're somewhat weak as far as light tanks, tier for tier, like compared to other tanks. In any sense though, what you have here is basically a tier 9 version of the RU251 that comes after it. However, you do note it is a little bit larger, but basically stat wise you're looking at a very similar tank. The RU251 used to be at tier 8 as well before they bumped it up to tier 9 when they kind of extended the tech tree to tier 10 for lights. Now, popping into a comparison here, I threw some tanks in here that are similar, and also there's two tech tree ones here. You have the HWk 12, the tier 8 German tech tree tank, then the WZ132. The remainders are premium tanks. The closest being is the M4190 to the HWk 30. However, I threw in a couple more here for comparison's sake. In any event though, getting into the breakdown, the HWk 30, 240 damage per shot, pretty darn good for a tier 8 light. Only the WZ132 beats it out here. It is tied with the M4190 and the HWk 12. One thing to note, it does not say it in here, shell velocity is much better on the HWk 30 than the HWk 12, which is god-awful. And I believe it barely beats out the M4190 a bit, so the shell does fly pretty darn fast in comparison's sake. One thing to note, the heat shell here, 250 millimeters of pen, which is pretty good for a tier 8 light tank. However, the HE shell is pretty darn awesome. 102 millimeters of penetration, much higher damage here, and it's one nice thing that you get from this tank. It's the same as the M4190 that also has that 102 millimeter pen on the HE round, which is good for flanking shots. On mediums, as long as you don't hit the track, heavy tanks, in the butt and stuff, TDs, and also penetrating lights, even frontally. The HWk 12, by comparison, only 45 millimeters of pen, like going over to the WZ132, 50 millimeters of pen. So the HE shell is pretty darn awesome on the HWk 30, like the M4190, like the tier 9 RU251, and even like the tier 10 RHM Panzerwagen. So in any event, penetration higher than average here, 187 millimeters. Comparing that to the other ones, only the M41D and also the WZ132 beats that out just barely. So above average pen. Rate of fire, we'll get to that because the rate of fire is good, but it also depends on damage per shot, DPM. The gun traverse speed, it is a little bit low. However, it's still pretty darn high. You don't really notice that the basically turret, say, traverses a little bit slower than other lights, but it is, I guess, a negative. It's just not one that you actually notice very often unless you're zipping around brawling other lights at like full speed. Gun depression, -10 degrees, excellent. As you can see here, best in this comparison. Only the T92 is up there with it. And this tank, do note the higher size. The T92, a little bit smaller silhouette, popping over stuff with the same gun depression, but -10 degrees is pretty darn great. Compared to the M4190, this is a better kind of ridge fighter. I wouldn't say hold down because you're still going to get penned if you get shot, but aiming time here, do note 2 seconds. It's a little bit longer than most other lights outside of the WZ132. However, 2 seconds isn't bad overall. Once you start adding, say, like food or brothers in arms and crew skills and stuff on that, the aiming time, it's not that long whatsoever. 0.35 accuracy. As you can see here, it's not the best However, it's not the worst. The best, being the M41D here. However, comparing it to these other tanks here, it's not really a negative factor of this tank. And when you put the whole package together, 0.35 accuracy, the aiming time, even though, granted it is a little bit longer than most others outside WZ-132, the gun depression, it's, overall the package is pretty darn good, and the penetration and the damage and, the different shells you have. And the DPM finally here, almost 2100 if you round up, to where yes, it's lower than the M4190, almost one shot per minute you're doing less as far as DPM, so almost 200 damage per minute lower there compared to that. The M41D going down there is higher than it as well, and the LT432 just by a smidgen. However, the higher alpha is really nice, so comparing it to that, really the DPM, it's pretty darn good considering 240 damage per shot and that HE round, which is pretty awesome with the high pen. However, it does do a little bit less damage, respectfully, than the M41 90mm. But comparing it to the poor little tech tree tanks down there, the HWK-12, also the WZ-132, it does do more DPM than them. Moving down here, best in this comparison as far as HP. Armor-wise, it doesn't have any armor. The only tank in this comparison is the LT432. Medium tank. It's a light tank, but it feels like a medium as far as the armor. But yeah, non-existent armor whatsoever. And the large size, it is noticeable, so you have to keep that in mind. As far as mobility here, specific power is a little bit weak compared to other tanks. However, it is kind of in line with the WZ-132. And it's not that sluggish. Like, it's faster in the M4190, which is the slowest in this comparison, and one of the slower, if I'm not mistaken, as far as like specific power and like stuff like that, slowest one of the tier 8 lights. This one is not that bad. Like, many people I see note it as a negative. However, it's not that big of a negative. It's faster in the M4190 with similar stats on the gun, and it's basically, it's a mobile light. It's just the size that kind of gets you. Top speed is pretty good, reverse speed as well. It's a little bit slower top speed wise than the M41. However, looking at the other lights, it's pretty much in line, if not higher than them, so no really complaints there. Traverse speed here, it's a little bit less on the traverse than the M41. And it's not great, it's not bad, it's just kind of average, so nothing really to ding it there. Concealment is a little bit low, but respectfully, it's better than the M4190. It's higher than the M41D as well. However, it is a little bit less, I guess, sneaky, camouflaged, whatever you want to call it, than other tanks in its class. Albeit, what kind of makes up for it is the 410 meters of V-range. Same as the HWK-12. However, you're getting a little bit more HP. You're also getting a lot better of a gun. So you have a lot of upside over the HWK-12 that, it's small. However, same view range, camouflage a little bit worse than the HWK-12. So the whole package here, like before I move on here, like I noted, so let's clear all these out here. We got ourselves pretty much a down-tiered RU-251. And like popping this into the comparison here, and I just need to get everything just kind of basic here. No crew skills, no nothing, just to keep them similar. You got yourselves an R251 at tier 8. Yes, it's a little bit larger, same kind of silhouette and stuff, just a little bit larger. Same damage per shot, lower penetration. Like the R251, as I noted, has that 102mm pen HE round, so the same there and the same damage. However, the RU-251 has the better basic shell here with 215mm of pen on its standard APCR shell, and then 250 on the heat. The HWK-30 here has that lower 187mm pen on the APCR, same heat, also same HE shell. So literally the RU-251, same damage, just higher pen on that APCR, same on the heat, same on the HE. And then you move down here, same gun depression, little bit faster on the turret traverse, Aiming time just shaves a little bit off there at the tier 9. Same accuracy, almost the same DPM, so you get 60 DPM. That's so much, you know, just moving up one tier higher compared to the standard premium light. HP is the biggest difference, 250. Same armor and everything. Also, the mobility goes up a little bit, like the RU251 gets a bit zippier. However, like considering there's a 1-tier difference, you know, the RU251 needs that specific power to keep this kind of sane. Same top speed. Traverse is actually higher on the HWk 30, which is kind of surprising. And then, you know, as you kind of scroll down here, you get a little bit better camouflage. However, the same view range. So basically, it's a no-brainer to pick this thing up. Don't get me wrong. It's just a matter of, like, do you need another tier 8 light tank? Like, do you really need it? They keep releasing, you know, tier 8 lights where they're just flat out better than the tech tree ones. And when are they gonna basically buff the tech tree ones? Because, you know, they're releasing these tanks that they're classified as tier 8 premium lights, but they're really tier 8.5 premium light tanks. They're not really tier 8. You know, everyone flat out, when you watch the videos, buy it, buy it, buy it. You know, this is a good tank. I'm not saying it isn't. It's just, you know, do you really need another tier 8 premium light? If you already have an LT432, M4190, if you have the Panhard, albeit that's completely different than this tank, ELC even 90, M41D, T92, you don't really need to pick up the HWk 30 unless you really want, you know, a slightly weakened RU251. But keyword is slightly. Like, going over that comparison, they are almost, in my opinion, the same tank outside of the lower HP for the most part. It's like, you know, there's the penetration difference and stuff too. But however, like, do you really need this tank? I would say only pick it up if you actually want another German light tank for crew training. And that exception, or I guess let me get to that, you're really only buying this for crew training for the RU251 here. As far as the crew setup, doesn't share the tier 10, doesn't even share the tier 8 in the same tier as far as the crew setup, doesn't share the tier 7, doesn't share the tier 6, tier 5, yes, it shares there, but then you're getting down to the low tiers. It's just you're really only picking this up if you want a tier 8.5 RU251 that's, you know, slightly larger with less HP and less basic penetration. It's just one of those things that, you know, for most people, I would say, you know, if you just really want this for frontline and stuff, pick it up. However, for the most part, you know, I can't really say go out and get this because the crew training isn't there. And honestly, it's just how many light tanks do you actually need to play? Because I know some people really like them, but for the most part, like, they're not the best class out there for World of Tanks, because you can get screwed over by maps, you can get screwed over by teams, and it's really frustrating when you plop down, say, 30, 40, and even though not getting 40 is a little high, because tier 8 lights, most, you know, a little bit above $30 as far as the NA server. Like, you're plopping down that money, and if you already have another one, I would say this isn't exactly a tank you need to get. But in any event, I ran it a little bit too long here than I thought. There's no gameplay, obviously, because, you know, for the most part, people know how this thing's going to play just looking at its stats. But thanks for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and feel free to pop some comments in the YouTube section here if you disagree with me, or if you agree with me. I will appreciate them too. But anyway, thanks again for watching. Have a very nice day, and I'm pretty sure I didn't have Levi here. Levi has returned. I didn't have his webcam up because he was being a jerk and he was sitting on the other side of me here. But anyway, thanks again for watching. Have a very nice day. See ya.